we'll call it a rags to riches to rags again sort of story.
Thanks, everyone. This is Brian Culhane Interviews, a success story series. I'm here today with Glenn Sanford, my coach and mentor, visionary creator of EXP Realty and master entrepreneur. Also, the first closer. I just want to add that. He was the original. He's the closer OG, Glenn Sanford.
Oh, well, I'm not sure what to say about that, but I always be closing. Is that the Glenn Ross kind of
You know, I think that wasn't part of my original training package, was the Glenn Ross video. So absolutely, always be closing, folks. But I do want to kind of take us back to some of those early years. And, obviously a lot of people do know the EXP story. A lot of people know the origin story of EXP. But I want to go back a little further and figure out the origin story of Glenn Sanford.
Oh, sure.
Does that sound?
Okay,
right.
Let's do it.
So take us back. Where do you come from? Where were your beginnings?
Well, I was born in Peace River, Alberta, so that's actually north of Edmonton. So the rumor was that I actually had to look south to see the Northern Lights, but we moved to the lower mainland of British Columbia prior to me actually paying attention to the Northern Lights. But so that was by the time I was 3 years old, and so we're in the bee business up in northern Alberta. My dad, my uncle, my family moved to British Columbia.
So beekeepers,
like they
like
raised
legit
raised bees,
wore the masks,
made honey. Yeah. They had the bee boxes, and they came from a family that for prior generation had run beehives from Northern California to Northern Alberta, and so that was sort of the business that they sort of grew out of the Great Depression, and then ultimately that was the business.
Harvesting sunlight. Okay. I like it.
Yeah. We were there. That time, we were kind of just scraping together. Single wide manufactured home. We actually pulled the home from Alberta to British Columbia, so we brought our home with us. So that was our first sort of motor coach experience.
Your first mobile experience, mobile agent, early beginnings.
And then my dad and my uncle, they ended up putting some money into a granola company.
Okay.
And that company actually did really well. They did that in 1971, and they ended up selling to Kellogg's in 1978, 79. And so during that time, we went from a single-wide manufactured home and had a great deal of success. And I
probably bought a bigger house.
We did, yeah. Actually, at the time, 1978, I think it was almost 10,000 square feet at the time, which is obviously huge.
Still is.
Yeah. But that was then, and then my dad decided to get in the oil and gas business, and he'd already been doing a little investing in it, and he went in heavy just before oil crashed.
Yeesh.
So that was sort of we'll call it a rags to riches to rags again sort of story.
Bottom of the hill, top of the hill, I think you said, back down to the bottom of the hill.
Yeah. And
so how did that affect how old were you at this time? Junior high age or how?
Yeah, so I was 14, 15, 16,
Going
17.
into high school.
Yeah, so during that sort of, graduate high school in 84.
So you went from kind of like just Glenn to top of the hill Glenn to then like humble Glenn, or how did that affect you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, my dad sort of always figured out how to sort of pay the bills.
Yeah.
But never really got anything going again after that of any significance. When I went to university, I didn't go under scholarship, so there wasn't enough money to really sort of keep it going. So I ended up dropping out a couple times.
When did you realize that was not the case, that your dad couldn't effectively pay for you to go to college? How old were you?
Well, it's probably 19.
Okay.
19, something like that. But I was already interested in business. I'd already started did a little software company when I was 15.
I want to get into that, and I think what you said, you'd started 17 or 19 companies before you started EXP?
It depends.
We're going to go over every single company in detail, folks, so stay tuned. No, but I do want to touch back on something, and I have a whole sheet full of Glennisms, I call them, and I know some of them aren't maybe original Glennisms, but I'm just, my memory's not the best, so I don't always remember who he cited. But I do want to start with actually a James Sanfordism.
Okay.
And it's something that's very powerful in my life. James, your father, of course.
Yeah.
Very, very wise gentleman. And well, your dad told me something when I came into my wealth a little bit, and it was very sound advice, and I want maybe you could take us back to this moment in time. But he said, always invest in your kids. So could you talk about that one investment he might have made that was sort of thematic with that?
Yeah, well, when I was in middle school, I think grade 8 or something like that. So this is about 1978. So things were doing well. That was when the Apple II computer came out, and a couple of the teachers at school actually brought a math teacher and another teacher had an Apple II, and I could rent the computer for 25 cents an hour after school.
Okay.
So I'd literally bring.
So you were dabbling.
So I literally brought a roll of quarters in and just said, I'm like basically renting out the computer
for the rest of the year.
Yeah, pretty much. And
Okay.
there was the Apple I, and then this was the Apple II.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, my dad called actually from the computer store, and he was describing this Apple. And so he came home with an Apple II, which at the time, with everything, was like $7,000 to $9,000. So we're talking about, adjusted for inflation, this is like a $30,000-$40,000 computer.
Right.
So 48K of RAM. Actually, it had a 16K expansion card, so it actually was 64K of RAM. So like this is hooping up. Two 5.25-inch floppy drives, a green phosphorus monitor, dot matrix printer, and then 2 paddles so you could play Pong.
And that's what you did? Played Pong?
Well, I did play Pong a little bit, but more than anything, just sort of, I just loved playing.
Did you pull a Matthew Broderick and dial up the Pentagon and do you want to play a game?
Well, so ironically, this was in 1978, 79. I actually did, there were computer bulletin boards at the time. There was one called The Source that my dad subscribed to. There was the Dow Jones News Retrieval. And so I literally did. It was a 300 baud modem, and it literally did actually dial. But I didn't.
Whoever.
But I did get a couple things.
War games.
But
one of my favorite movies.
But unable to ever do anything.
Get anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you still have the ability, we may need you to dial into the Pentagon. Obviously, thank God your dad did that, right? For my life. I mean, just the way you've impacted me and the things that you've done for me. It's funny enough. When I first got, one of our big rev share checks and sort of really came into, I ran out and bought my kids an iMac. Okay, so just to kind of take a lesson from your dad. And I think it was cheaper. I bought the really big screen iMac.
I'm sure it was cheaper.
I think it was about half price what your dad paid, even
maybe even less than that.
Yeah, it was about $5,000. What do you always say, Glenn? Success leaves clues?
I do that actually, but of course I did get.
Who originally says that?
I don't know. It's probably back in the days of Christ. People like following Christ, like success leaves clues.
Follow this guy; he knows what he's talking about. So let's talk about some of that success philosophy. I think a big key to success is having those really impactful mentors or learning some piece of wisdom early on that really helps you get to the next step. What were some of those impactful moments in your early years?
Yeah. Well, so when I graduated high school, just to give you some perspective, I graduated high school with a 192. So I didn't graduate at the top of the class.
Yep, I know that pain.
And then when I went to university, I actually ended up pretty much flunking out my first year or so. So at 21, I was actually here in the Phoenix metro area, and I was going to Phoenix College, and I was doing judo. Judo, kind of one of the sports I did since I was like 17. But I was doing judo, and one of the guys at the judo club actually owned a bar here in town. So I ended up managing a bar here. So my dad and one of his business partners came in. And so I ended up serving them drinks and shooting pool, and my dad decided that managing a bar was not a professional job.
Yeah.
And so in Las Vegas, we actually went to Las Vegas like the next day because he had some business meetings there. I ended up interviewing for a job as a stockbroker. Now, I didn't know I was actually being interviewed. My dad called me at like 7 in the morning and says, I've got somebody coming to pick you up. And I'd been playing the slot machines and the blackjack table till probably 3 in the morning. So I'm like, I don't even know what's going on here. So anyway, I go, so 7 o'clock and says, I've got somebody coming to pick you up. So I get up. I literally, I remember I had big hair. Remember the 80s and 90s, so big hair.
Yeah.
And so it was just a mess. And so I go on this job interview and meet this guy named Herman Graulich. Now, again, I didn't really know I was actually being interviewed. But I ended up, he ends up wanting me to become a stockbroker. So I'm going, okay, sure. I'm 21 years old. That sounds cool. So I went and studied for the exam. But I was his roommate in Las Vegas when I was here, and I spent basically every week here and then flew back to Phoenix on the weekends because I still had the place in Phoenix. And it was only $25 to go each way, by the way, on Southwest Airlines.
Yeah,
I mean, it was dirt cheap. So I would go and do the practice exams, and Herman, he's this guy who's got his kids are doctors, lawyers. Professionals. He's
all business.
He's all business. He's in his early 60s.
Yeah.
And I do these exams, and at 5 in the morning, he gets up, he starts reviewing the exam, and he goes, Sanford, how the bleep did you miss this question? And this is what I got to live with for like 3 months.
Yeah. Boot camp.
It was boot camp.
Yeah.
I went and
business boot camp.
Oh yeah. So anyway, so I went from basically just sort of skating by to all of a sudden being on edge. Yeah. Like I can't miss a question because I don't want to be waking up like that ever again.
Yeah, right.
And so
do like the trash can lids and the whole thing.
So anyway, I ended up becoming a stockbroker, and Herman and I worked together for about 6 months. But that I ended up going back to school after that, going back to university, and I went from basically flunking out to being on the Dean's Honor Roll. So this guy sort of created this whole different drive to succeed.
He shouted the slacker out of you.
He did. Yeah. It was.
So is that an effective tool for those leaders out there and those coaches? Is yell it out of them?
Well, yeah. I would say if you're truly interested in improving your craft and you're
hire like a lazy, guy that just shouts
if you're
at you.
relatively lazy, find the most aggressive, obnoxious person to shout in your ear like a freaking,
Hey, that could be a good niche for
it could be.
Pay me to come yell at you. I'd be really good at it, folks. Well, so Herman was kind of your original business mentor coach. Did he also sort of turn you on to people to read, things to do?
I'd already been doing that.
Okay.
So I was in the
like what were some of those books? Like what was some like maybe from in your 20s, late teens, 20s? What was one of the most impactful books from that era for you? Because and the reason why I asked, Glenn, is we were recently on your yacht. And believe me, folks, you hear where Glenn comes from. My story, very similar. I was definitely the other side of the tracks growing up. So neither one of us was born on third base, but we were recently up tooling around Roach Harbor in the San Juan Islands on your very expensive yacht, we'll say. And you'd made a comment to me, and as a matter of fact, you started showing me some of the people that you grew up around. Obviously not name names or anything, but it was a mix of friends and family members and third, fourth generation people that you had grown up with. And you had said a comment to me that was, a lot of the folks were destined. Let's just say they weren't destined for greatness.
There was a side of my family that is not that destined. That was not that destined.
And you were surrounded by this, right? I mean, there weren't like
well,
you'd seen some success. Your dad,
So my dad was more. He was definitely the business guy.
Yeah,
he was definitely focused on business. He was sort of my role model.
Yeah, but you mentioned you were still slacking. You were still hitting the casinos. Like what? made you veer away from that course?
Losing lots of money at the casinos. Yeah, that really helped.
Another great tip, folks. Lose your money at the casino. You'll be successful.
And lose the money at the casinos when you don't have much money.
Yeah.
Because break your habit when it doesn't actually cost you that much.
So hit rock bottom early in life, and it's all upside from there, folks.
There you go. Because I literally like looking at a blackjack table.
A terrible philosophy. Well, here's another way of saying it. One of my other mentors over the years, David Bernstein. I think you've met David Bernstein, Murphy. He said the best advice he ever got was get rich slowly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's something to that, but you need to do it systematically. There's a couple movies just recently watched, which was Rounders with Matt Damon.
Love it. Yeah.
And of course he's this a poker player,
the ultimate grinder.
Yeah, and you just grind out a little bit, meaning playing the bets you can win.
Right.
And if you play the bets you can win or that you should win, and you get rid of all the other ones, and you know how to manage your money, you're not going to make a whole bunch on every single play at the table, but eventually you're going to be at the the top end, the leaderboard, whatever that is. So there's getting rich slow actually makes sense because you're doing it systematically rather than trying to do it all at once.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a powerful philosophy at some level, and I know we've compared EXP to the Moneyball of real estate. That's definitely a line we've used over the years. But that's kind of the Moneyball philosophy, right? Is get your wins, getting on base. Don't worry about the home runs and the grand slams.
Right. Yeah. And so if we look at my real estate career, my personal real estate career, I was and you and I coached you all the time on being a bread and butter real estate agent.
Right.
Like, so what ends up happening though is if you do the bread and butter deals.
Yeah.
And you're good at it, and you show up to every appointment, and you put the
$50,000 double wide out in Chandler, the El Mirage. I mean, I think for the first 2 or 3 years of chasing down leads for you here in Phoenix as your team leader, I don't think I showed one house in Scottsdale in those first 2 years. I mean, it was all Queen Creek and Peoria. That's kind of where the hot, 2005, 2006. We had a lot of the Canadian dollar moving in, and they didn't care where they lived.
Yeah, but you build your business, and then with that, ultimately you end up getting those big deals,
right? By
just continually showing up. So instead of worrying about trying to chase down the big deals, and me personally, I'm in Bellingham as an agent. I was working just internet buyer leads, and I was doing 25 deals a year, 30 deals a year. But I had a disproportionate share of deals over $1 million. Yeah. Mainly because I just worked the database, and people would show up, and and of course, if you've got 50 leads in your database, they're currently looking.
Yeah.
And somebody's looking at the higher end.
Yeah.
Well, you're still going to work that deal.
It also reminds me of another Jonah Hill movie. War Dogs. You ever see War Dogs?
I'm sure I did. Yeah.
War Dogs is where they were basically arms dealers, but they were like little startup nobody players. And then when the government said you had to put everything out to bid, they made a huge business going after the stuff that the big contractors didn't bid on.
Right.
Yeah. So it's Jonah Hill, folks, another success philosopher. Here, I want to kind of do some rapid fire. We put it out there to our audience to see if they had any questions for you. A lot of EXP and real estate related people did chime in, so I'm just going to rapid fire. Okay. So here we go. Quick answers. All right, Glenn. When Scott Marlowe here in Arizona said, Glenn, when did you know, all caps, EXP was going to have tens of thousands of agents and be on its way to hundreds of thousands of agents? When did you know it was going to be as big, and why?
Probably by 2012, we knew at that point that we'd definitely go over 10,000 agents. In fact, we were starting to talk about the whole idea that we'd be there by 2020. Of course, we eclipsed that, but at that point, we sort of had an idea that we were...
That would be like our tipping point, or sort of the dam was starting to burst, so to speak?
Yeah, we just, 10,000 was just sort of an iconic number, and we just did the math on what
growth.
Our model was doing.
Yeah.
And even though we were only a few hundred agents at that point, the math said...
The projections were good. Do the math. That's actually a huge piece. I have another shirt I'll be wearing later Insider today that says hashtag it's just math. I could share tons of stories. We'll have to get Glenn back on for a follow-up and really get into the EXP days. But all right, so Dalat Wynn, another agent here, practices acupuncture and does a lot of great things here. He says, how does he get better at judo?
Well, there were, and I think there still are, plenty of clubs in the valley here that you could join.
Practice,
practice, yeah. Well, show up to every practice.
Show up.
So Walter Van Helder, who was actually my coach here in Arizona, who in my opinion was the best coach I ever had.
Yeah.
It was a very simple philosophy. He says, "What's the difference between a black belt and a white belt? Black belt shows up to every practice."
Love that. Write that down. Flames or Oilers? Matt Ron wants to know.
Oh, I don't even follow hockey.
He doesn't even follow
or is that cricket? I don't know.
He's turning in his Canadian boots, his skates. All right. Kim says, Kim Toko, our executive producer, also does that Bitch in Real Estate show. She'll have Debbie on later. Would like to know what's next for EXP that you can disclose.
Yeah, you know.
Publicly traded company, folks.
Yeah. Certainly we went totally virtual. Obviously, that was what we did day one back in 2009 was we said, hey, how do we run this without...
That was our first game changer.
And we think that there's other, we call it verticals that sort of match up with what we've done in residential real estate. And so with that, it starts to make sense. Yeah.
No, that was a big Blake Gailey up in Utah. Glenn, do you see a hybrid? Do you see a connection or a nexus between solar and real estate as the niche? And is that something EXP would be interested in exploring? And I want to preface that with, Glenn has always been Glenn's philosophy with this company and our basically your life that I've witnessed over the last 15 years is similar to the philosophy my mom used to give me when I'd go over and play at my friends' houses. She said, always leave the house better than it was when you got there.
Right.
In order to clean up after yourself, right? It was my mom's unique way of saying that. You have a similar philosophy with the planet. Right. I mean, you grew up in Peace River,
right. Sustainability is one of our core values. And part of that's because and as we know, I mean, we got the wildfires going down in Australia right now.
Crazy.
There were fires up in Alaska when we were up there earlier or last year. So climate change is kind of one of those things that I think is a big deal.
Yeah.
And
we're green, we're paperless. We used to talk about having the lowest carbon footprint in real estate. Obviously, office offenders, huge offenders of CO2 output. You even explored the idea of carbon offset credits in the early years, I remember.
Oh yeah, in fact, I still have in the can a business plan that I think that would actually still make sense.
A couple more. I really want to get these out. Are you still running?
Oh, yeah.
Lisa Powers. Okay. What is your why? And this is a big question. Glenn used to always ask us this question. This is a Glennism. He'd always say, what is your why? And are you in a big enough vehicle to allow you to get there? Glenn, what is your current why?
Yeah, I think I'm getting to the point that trying to help the next generation of entrepreneur is something that I think is pretty powerful. Like just helping guide them, point them in the right direction. Obviously, powerful. EXP is a great platform for doing that already.
Yeah, it's a great incubator, great think tank.
Yeah,
I've been connected with so many amazing entrepreneurial, social media, entertainment experts like Kim. I mean, just amazing connection, and we've actually spun off some really amazing side businesses and some opportunities that have developed had I not have been a part of EXP that never would have developed. So that was Chelsea Bivens, Evinger. Want to know what gets you out of bed every day?
Well,
it can be like a product or some sort of alarm clock or you have your bed on a treadmill and it just kicks in at like 5 a.m.?
No, well, I do get up fairly early, typically 6:30.
Yeah.
I trade a few stocks. So I want to just see how the market opens.
A little crypto.
Yeah, I'm actually just bought some Bitcoin. I felt like it bottomed out, so I bought some at 7,500.
So you never got rid of the gambling bug, then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm a speculator on good bets.
Yes, I like that. Matt Salzecki, does EXP look anything like you imagined in 2009? And again, I know I asked you this at dinner probably about a year ago. I said, Glenn, did you believe we'd be this big? What did you tell me back? What did you say about belief?
So in 2009, I knew that it had the potential to be something. But the way that we committed to that was, if it doesn't work, we all have to go get different jobs. And it was pretty much that. It was like, hey, we're at the bottom of the housing market.
Yep.
The economy sucked.
Yeah.
And we couldn't afford physical bricks and mortar office at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, if we're going to do this, and if it's got to make money, and
like
if
the Hail Mary.
And this is the only way I can figure out how to make money in a bad market, is to get rid of all the expenses.
Right.
And
it was ludicrous.
Right. But what we had at the time, of course, was high-speed internet on our phones. We had 3G. We had different
emerging cloud office.
Yeah,
but
so
it wasn't even called the cloud. It was 3D immersive office environments. Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah. And so it was the perfect storm of a housing market that crashed and the technologies that had come up that allowed us to actually do things virtually. And so we felt like the ingredients were there, and if we could get the model right, it would grow.
Well, Glenn, again, we could talk for hours. I do want to maybe leave with one parting thought, or kind of weave this question into every interview that I do. But, we talked about the power of belief. I know you've even, you've invited me to be a part of a manifestors club, and the power of manifesting and the power of belief. But, what would be your best advice? Someone looking to be successful, you're now nearing the B word, we should say, in the illionaire category. So you're approaching.
I'm still
you got ways to go,
there.
But you're approaching. I said, right? I said approaching. Yeah. So you will be there. Yeah, it's already happened. It will happen. We believe it's going to happen. But what would be your advice for someone looking to follow the clues of Glenn Sanford?
Yeah, just remember that the business that you have right now is perfectly designed. Now, you might not realize that the reason why it operates the way it operates is because you actually put all the programs in place that actually makes it operate the way it operates. So if you can figure out a way to change some of the operating system, you can get different results. So
the business, let me see if I can translate, because that's how I've built my career, is trying to translate Glennisms to the masses. So if your business that you've built, or the idea of your business, is already perfectly built.
Right, for the rules that you've
for your life, for who you are, for what you've set up. It's the programs that you are implementing that could make it go haywire or make it run smoothly.
Right. So a lot of people say that they want this level of success, but their business doesn't reflect that. But their business operates perfectly relative to the rules that they actually put in place for their business. So,
and business is their systems and their teams.
The systems, teams, the way that they
their exit strategy.
Yeah. Do they operate it as a business?
Yeah.
Or do they operate it as a hobby? Do they operate it? You get out of your business exactly what you need. So if you need drama in your life, your business will give you drama. If you need to stress about finances, your business will help you stress about finances. Yeah. If, however, you have a drive to truly be successful, you will put in the systems and processes, but the drive has to be there first. Yeah. And then you'll actually create the perfect business. It's the concept of what I refer to as cognitive dissonance. So when your reality doesn't match up with your with what you truly believe you deserve and truly want in life, then one of two things have to happen. One, you have to either accept that and
adjust your goals,
or you have to adjust
your systems.
Because your mind can't deal with this dissonance.
That is suffering.
It is.
The root of suffering, right?
So the first part is to accept that your business is already perfect.
Yeah.
And then work on your business to match up with where you want to go.
Wow, that's some profound stuff. We're going to have to go back and read the transcripts. Glenn, I want to thank you so much. Other than my father, you are the most important male influence in my entire life. I've reached a point in my career where, I don't have a lot of cares. Financial freedom, time freedom, family freedom. You've given me an amazing gift. And I think that gift was just letting me kick around your dojo for as long as you have, and not kicking me out and pushing me down the stairs, or, letting me carry water, run through a few brick walls for you. But it was my honor and privilege to do that for you. And I thank you, sir, from the bottom of my heart and my family's heart.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
Awesome.